sit here and watch me round it out at, just a couple hundred RPM or anything. So I know we had talked about one of the bowls that I brought last time, which had a fully round bottom with no foot on it. We probably have enough time to do 2 different bowls. We could do one with no foot and one with a foot if you guys want to see that. But I thought it would be a good opportunity to try demonstrating turning like a super thin bowl. So we can do that. And then I also wanted to spend some time just having a discussion and kind of a presentation on bowl design. And I cut a bunch of my bowls in half so you can see the cross section. And maybe we can pass them around now, and then when I'm done turning, we can do more talking about these. But I'd like you to sort of pick them up and see how they feel, and look at the cross section and see where you think more wood or less wood could have been taken away. Just see how they feel, because a lot of times we really put a lot of emphasis on consistent wall thickness in your bowls, but I feel like they're generally a little bit less interesting when they don't have any variation. And I gotta be careful on this. We'll start getting into that part of the demo first, but I generally prefer them to have just a little bit more here in the bottom, and then sort of a wedge shape around the rim, and then thin out a little bit in the middle. And that just kind of makes them feel a little bit more interesting when you pick them up. They have a little bit more character to them, and it's not quite as boring as, it's not that it's boring, but it's just, if it's all the way the same, all the way to the bottom, it tends to feel a little bit plain to me.
Well, a heavier body at the bottom too would aid in the stability too.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to do a decorative piece with a little tiny foot on it.
Yeah, you don't want to just touch it and then round it around on the table.
Yeah, it probably needs, 1.5 to 2 times the thickness, just right there at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, okay, and this seems like a pretty good hold on here. The jaws are a little bit more open than they should be, but I think it'll be fine, and I can use the tailstock if I need to. And I just realized that I did this on a screw chuck, so I probably need to figure out how to do this another way, because I've got my hole through here now. You don't happen to have a woodworm screw, do you?
Yeah, I'll bring it. It's one of those things when I transport it falls off.
I might be able to get away with doing one of these drive centers, but I was trying to pack light this morning. Yeah, Drew is talking about how open the jaws are, and most manufacturers, the chuck jaws need to be about 1/8 of an inch before they're completely closed to get a complete circle around the tenon. Otherwise, you're gripping on the corners of each one of those jaws. Okay, so we'll have to true it up a little bit, but it should be all right.
shorter to the rest of it, so that you
Okay. It's always a good idea just to put your hand on the headstock and feel for vibration. See how that goes. So we're just truing everything up right now, and I'm going to make this tenon a little bit smaller while we've got it flipped around the other way. That's the best part about turning green wood. Always turn off the lathe when you move the tool rest. And it's a good idea to check your tailstock as you go, just because it can tend to move a little bit on you. Okay. And then I brought one of my favorite little tools, which was just a round nose scraper, and I ground it to match the dovetails on my one-way chucks. So this basically lets you just go right in at an angle, and you've got a perfectly fitting dovetail tenon. You gotta adjust the tool rest height a little bit because it's a skinnier tool. That's it. Should have measured the chuck first, but that should be all right. Then we'll true up the front side. And then when I'm doing green wood, I like to just kind of chamfer the corners like that, just so that there's not any sharp edges.
Well, you got it in that configuration. Do you work any on the bottom part of the bowl now? Or you turn around?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. I'll go ahead and do that. I got kind of thrown off there because I realized that I had the woodworm screw sticking on the side that I wanted to have my tenon. So I had to switch it around the other way, then we'll switch it back again. So there's a lot of back and forth turning. Sometimes you have to flip it, sometimes 3-4 times. So yeah, let's go ahead and do the outside shape. And we might have to true it up a little bit more when we flip it around, just depending on how good the fit is on the chuck. The fit of the chuck is important because you don't want your piece to fly off the lathe. But the other reason why it's important is because when you flip it around, if you don't have a really nice full circle grip on the tenon, it's gonna compress the wood fibers and it's not gonna run true anymore. So you're gonna have to awkwardly come back here and do the outside of the bowl again to true it up. And we might have to do that in just a few minutes, but it'll be all right. Does that make sense to everybody?
And one thing you can do too, over the years, I found that I'll always mark my #1 jobs
Yeah.
on the tenon. So that way I'm putting it back in, and when, like you said, if you want to reverse it 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
mark those #1 jobs, so you can put it back in and stand a better chance of inbound.
It's running true. Yeah.
Another thing, like where this blank has sapwood on one side,
Yeah.
if your jaws are compressing into the wood, they're going to compress that side further than the other side.
Exactly.
And that's going to exacerbate the outer roundness.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to get a piece with all heartwood or all sapwood, but it is what it is. And it looks cool too when it's done. But you do have to kind of keep that density of the wood in mind when you have sapwood and heartwood. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the outside. I'm using, not that it matters, but I'm using I think this is a 5/8 swept back grind bowl gouge. You can turn any bowl gouge into any grind you want. You just buy whichever diameter you want and then put the grind on it if you like. So I like the swept back grind because it's kind of, it can sort of do a little bit of everything, and the thing that it does the best is that because you have this big long wing on here, you can take off a ton of wood at one time. So on a bigger lathe with more horsepower on it, you can take off like a 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch in one pass. So, but anyway, let's go ahead and get this done. What speed? Just a little under 1,000. And I'll probably,
Why don't you crank that baby up to 2,500?
yeah. So
Everybody running.
So a bowl that's this size, I would be comfortable in my own shop. I would be comfortable running this at probably 16 or 1700 RPM. But I didn't bring a mallet with me, so we've got the 4-prong drive is holding that on with tailstock pressure. So we don't have a super amazing hold right now. But hopefully we should be able to fix that with this. When I flip it around and put it in the chuck, we can bring the speed up, and I might even bring it up just a little now. But actually, before I do that, let's do the totally round base bottom first. And to do that, we need to do something that's, I think it's referred to as projecting the curve. So we've got a tenon on here, right? But we want that to be gone. But we've got a flat shoulder there for the chuck jaws to rest against. So we actually need to make another step in there. Make another shoulder in here. It's a little bit hard to explain, but maybe you'll see when, as we do it, why it's important. But we kind of need to have a second shoulder in there so that we have enough room to project the curve all the way to the bottom of the bowl. If you can tell right now, if we were to try to make a round bottom bowl the way that this is now, we would have to take a lot of wood off up here to bring that curve all the way in, because we have this flat shoulder here. I hope that makes sense, but let's get to turning because.
Almost like you're creating another foot for it.
Yes, you're basically making another foot, and you would also do that anytime that you want the foot of your bowl to be smaller than the size of whatever chuck you're using. Okay, let's go ahead and get going with this because we got kind of a lot to cover. all the cuts that I'm doing right now are peeling cuts. And I'm always watching the horizon of the bowl, not down where I'm cutting. It's okay to peek at where you're cutting to make sure you've got your gouge positioned correctly, but these will tell you that you have it positioned correctly, and the horizon, let's see, what was I trying to say? Watching the horizon is what you need to be looking at. You can glance down at the tool, but look at the horizon to see how the shape is progressing as you go. We'll make this shoulder a little deeper. And actually, in my shop, I work with the overheads off, and I have lights directly above the lathe and behind the lathe, and that will really help you to see that curve, because right now, with the light gray in the background, it's actually hard for me to tell how the curve is looking. So if you can, or you can even put like a piece of black poster board behind the lathe, and that will silhouette your piece. Okay, and then I usually do that with that part with the gouge. We can shear scrape it, or I like to use just a standard scraper to do the outsides. The tool rest needs to come up just a little bit, because we're going to angle this down slightly. And the difference between a scraper like this and a carbide tool is that this has been ground on the grinder along the edge, and so there's this little thin bit of metal around the top that's going to scrape for us, but it's shaped like a hook, so it's going to actually cut the wood more than scraping it. But it's called scraping. Let's do it. Put that up a little bit more. And you can prop it up on its side a little too if you need to. Another good tip is to wax your tool rest with some paraffin, like an old candle, because I'm getting stuck on it right now. But if you put a little wax on there, it'll help you get that shape to flow a little better. I'm going to shear scrape, so I've got the tool, I've got the flute of the tool all the way to the left. I'm going to drop the handle really low. And you get these little teeny shavings that tell you you're doing it right. And I'll try not to get too fussy with it, because I could just sit here for 30 minutes and do this. Okay. Then we'll get rid of that sharp corner. Looks pretty good. Don't have any tear out. That's good. Okay, and now I can show you. See, we've got that second foot there, and now we have enough meat left on it. Well, maybe. We've got enough meat in here left to finish this curve all the way to the bottom. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Is this gonna be a wobbly bowl?
Yeah, we'll do this one wobbly, and then we'll do, if we have time, I could do another one quicker with no talking, but it just depends on what you guys want to see. But I think the design portion of what I wanted to do today is, I think it'll be really helpful, and you know, it helps your work stand out from something that you could go. Anybody ever go to like TJ Maxx or something and see a wood bowl for $20? You know, it's got that flat bottom in it, and kind of a just so design. This is where you can really elevate your work. Everybody knows to thread the chuck on with this hand, right? With the wheel. Instead of just twisting it like this, you'll ruin your threads. That's pretty good. That's still too big, but that's all right. And if you look down the chuck, you should be able to see where it connects and see if you've got any light coming through. That means that you don't have a square shoulder. And the biggest area of strength that the chuck has on the bowl is right where that sharp corner is in your dovetail. You've got pressure along the sides, but you've got the shoulder of the, you've got the straight section of the shoulder that's making that firm contact with the top of the jaws. Now, I think this might not be running that true, but we'll see. I am having to tighten it a little bit more than I would like to. But if you don't have a pair of calipers, okay, here's my chuck that I use, and I had to change these this morning, but just take your calipers or your these are dividers really, and measure the distance between the inside of one jaw to the opposite jaw, and that will give you the size tenon that you need. And then you can just transfer that onto here with the lathe spinning. Just don't stick the right hand side. Don't stick both points in at one time, or else you'll be happy you were wearing a face shield.
Throw it back in.
Yeah, I've done it a few times, and you know, sometimes it happens on accident, but it's best just to avoid that if you can. Okay. Now, before we start hollowing it out, it's a good idea to just check your tool rest height. Does that look good, or do I need to move it? What do you guys think?
I think too high.
A little too high, yeah. So when you switch out a tool, if it's a different diameter shank on the tool, you got to move the tool rest. You don't have to, but you're going to be cutting in a more optimal position if you move it. I'm going to have the flute at 10 o'clock while I'm peeling the top surface of this, and if I drag the tool across the rest where it's going to be, it should be coming out right on center. I could actually come up just a little bit more. And you know, when you're starting out, or if you're not used to moving it a whole lot, you kind of have to sit here and play with it. But after a while, it just becomes second nature and you don't even think about it. It's just the same as breathing. So, okay, let's see. Any questions so far? Okay. We'll start with the speed all the way down. I think that was all the way down, right? Yeah. And we'll see how we're running. That's true enough. If you know, it's like, why does it matter that it's running true when you flip it? Because when you go to hollow out the inside, you're going to be taking off more on one half of the bowl than you are on the other half, and your rim is going to be uneven. And it's not as safe to run it at a high speed when it's out of balance. But this is so close to being true that I think it'll be fine. We'll do like, that's still going up. We'll do like 1100, maybe a little lower. You do what you want in your own shop. That's the way I think about it. All right, so we're just gonna peel the front surface. Screw it up. And when I'm truing up that front surface, I go ahead and make my rim. Because we're not going to come back to it anymore. And I usually just go for something that slightly comes inward towards the inside of the bowl. And that just makes it nicer to pick up. If you have your rim of your bowl slanting away outside of the bowl, it just doesn't feel right. You have that sharp corner at the top. So, all right. It is very difficult demoing on a lathe that's not yours. So y'all just bear with me. Go ahead and get rid of the tail center. We're still at about 1100. And we're starting with the flute at 3 o'clock. Is that right? 12, 1 through 3. 3 o'clock, and then once you have your bevel rubbing, you can engage the tip and open the flute. Drop the handle. I was trying to brush off the shavings because they'll rust the bed. And I think I'm going to have to get rid of the tail stuff altogether. Now, if this was a bigger bowl, and you were trying to go super thin with it, I would not recommend working from the rim all the way to the bottom in one go. I would probably work down like 1.5 to 2 inches at a time, get your thinness there, then hollow out a little bit more in the middle, and then match it all the way down. I find the trouble with that is that it's really hard to get rid of those ridges that you get from starting and stopping. If you can go all the way from the rim to the very center of the bottom of the bowl in one go, you should end up with a clean, smooth cut. So something this small is not going to have that Any questions so far or anything?
Because the rim's actually gonna be flexing it, isn't it?
Right, the rim is gonna be getting out of balance, especially when you're turning green, the wood is moving all the time, and even if it's dry, it's still moving. So as you're introducing all that friction and heat and it's drying out, you're introducing a lot of movement into the piece. But all right, let's go ahead and
So when you're turning your stuff green, you try to, like I had the problem where I'll stop and go have lunch and come back and it's like, it's not round anymore, right?
Right. I don't ever stop a green bowl halfway through. If I wasn't talking and I was in my own shop, I mean, it would take 30 minutes or less to do a bowl, maybe even twice the size. You need to get your technique down and do it all in one go. Because if you go, you can go to the bathroom, but maybe not number 2 if you just do number 1. Get out of the bathroom. But if you're going to do number 2, you're going to come back and your bowl's not going to be round anymore. So even this talking in here is kind of makes me nervous, but it's a small piece and it's actually mostly quarter sawn, so it's going to be fairly stable. But let's go ahead and get the inside finished. I've got the flute almost all the way open because we're not taking a really heavy cut. And the idea is to cut with, I think I did actually drop this still. The idea is to cut just to the left of the nose, the tip of the nose, so that you get more of a sheer cut. Taking too much wood. Does it slide? The headstock?
Is it what?
Does it slide at all? No. You slow down right at the end. Otherwise you'll bust through that little nib and hit the other side of your bowl and go your garage. The rim is about where I want it, but the bottom is still a little thick, so I'm gonna hold the tool down to the rest with my thumb, and I'm gonna use my other fingers to rest them behind the bowl and just put the same amount of pressure on the bowl as the amount of pressure that I'm using with the gouge. So that way it kind of dampens any vibration and the piece is supported directly behind the tip of the tool. And I was kicking myself on the way here because I forgot to bring my depth gauge, so we're just gonna have to guess. Let's see. If you take just a square piece of wood, like a 1x1 or something like that, nice and long, maybe 12 or 14 inches, drill a hole through the middle of it that matches a dowel rod that you have. You've got a depth gauge there, and you can rest that 1x1 on the rim of the bowl, push the dowel in until it hits the bottom, move your banjo out of the way, and stand here and look at that dowel, and you can see how far you are getting to the bottom. Does that make sense? Okay. I think I can take a little more out of here still. And I think we have the depth to do it. And when you're doing the inside, typically you're going to be dropping the handle more than I'm doing now, but I'm hitting the bedways, so I can't really do that, but we'll try our best. Okay, that's as thin as we'll go for the demo.
It sounds thin.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see. You can wiggle it. And I do have some ridges in there, which is another good place for the scraper that I was talking about. I might do a little of that. When your walls start getting thin, you got to be careful with this thing because it's not the same as a gouge, so it's a little bit more aggressive, and you just have to be careful not to push too hard with it. And it can also tend to want to feed itself in, so just remember to keep it, almost horizontal, but you got the end of the handle tipped up just a little bit so that we're clearing this bottom part of the edge.
Use a native rake scraper at this point.
I don't really know that I can tell the difference. I think for me, I would use a negative rake scraper if I had a bunch of lumps in there that I wanted to get rid of. I think these feel more like tool marks to me. But the negative rake scraper, from my limited experience with them, I feel like it's a little bit easier to blend things together where they're not even. But I don't necessarily know that I find it any better than just a standard scraper. And I know other people know more about it than I do, but like I'll use the tip of my skew chisel as a negative rake scraper with the burr on it.
Mm-hmm.
And because you've got that double beveled tool, you have that downward angle. It's like a scraping angle. But when this is tipped, the handle's tipped up just a little bit here, we already are kind of at that negative.
It's kind of
So-
on the native rate, yeah.
But people will die on that hill, so I know that they're good. I just don't necessarily feel like I need one. But I use my skew a lot for that. It's a radius skew. Okay, so you can see here we're not at center anymore because we were using a 5/8 gouge, and this is only a 1/4 inch thick. So we need to bring the tool rest up a little bit, and I'll point it into the bowl just a little bit to get a little closer, but we're not hanging off that far. Okay, now you really want to get I'm gonna just leave that there because of time's sake, but, you really want to get good enough with the gouge that you've got like that really light touch so that you don't have those tool marks in there, because the longer you mess around with the scraper, the more you're going to get those bumps and valleys. You really need to have a tool that has a bevel on it that's going to guide itself to the bottom. I'm almost tempted to take another pass, but that's just too much, so we'll just leave it.
That's good advice right there. You feel like just one more? That's probably
Yeah.
just not running.
Yeah, because this is a demo, you can look at my other stuff, I can turn them thin, but if I go to get too gutsy in here, we'll just go through the bottom. You can already see light through it, so that's good. Also, that second tenon that we were talking about, this other shoulder here, I've gone below that on the inside of this bowl. So if we didn't have that there and we took this tenon off, we'd have a hole in the bottom, right? So that double, we'll call it a double tenon. That just gives you a little insurance policy too, not to go through the bottom of that. Because this depth here is like,
So you didn't mean to do that, though, right?
right. But I don't have to worry about it because I've got that extra meat there. And if we didn't want to make this a round bottom bowl, we could still bring that curve in and have this tenon be the bottom still. So you've got options. And if I had a mortise, what would we have? Anybody know what we'd have if I had a mortise in here?
Funnel.
We'd have a funnel. So use a tenon, people. That's my thing. 2 months ago when that guy came and did the demo with the red oak and he did the mortise grip, it just made me so nervous because he had that crack in the bowl. He was turning at like, 10,000 RPMs with the mortise in there. And these things move, with that kind of centrifugal force in there. So you expand it into the mortise, right? You got your tight grip and you're sitting there wrenching it down, trying to, stop before you hear it crack. Then you turn the lathe on and you've got more pressure expanding now. So my recommendation is to just use a tenon. It's just that, it makes that much more sense. You've got design options, you've got a stronger hold, and people say, well, but then you're gonna lose, a ½ inch of wood because you used a tenon, you gotta take it off now. Well, would you rather have a really thick bowl with a deep mortise in the bottom, or would you rather have lost that little bit of wood on there because you made a nice design and you gave yourself that extra insurance? That's my way of thinking about it. Now, platters and stuff, like your platter, I probably would have used a mortise there too. I think that's a good idea. And that's normally where you'll see professionals and stuff use a mortise. Every professional that I know of uses a tenon, and then they use a mortise if it's a platter. Because a lot of times with a platter, you're starting off with a piece of wood that's only like 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches thick to begin with, so you actually don't really have any room to play with.
You probably have to put your hand under it and adjust your lined up.
Oh, it's sitting at the drum. Okay, so now what do we do? Because we got to get this tenon off of here, right? Because we used the tenon. If we did a mortise, we would be done. But it's better in the long run. And this lets you, if you have a mortise, you have to have room on the sides, right? So that you have some wood there to hold on to. But when you take it off the lathe, you're done. So you can't adjust that foot really anymore. Does that make sense? You've kind of sealed the deal. Now we have to reverse mount it, and that's a chore, but we can make this foot look however we want, or take it away altogether. This is just a little scrap piece of wood. I always save these because they're always really good to have around for making a jam chuck or making a friction drive, which is what we'll do now. I brought this, but it won't fit on here. Has everybody seen one of these? Just I think it's like corrugated rubber. You just glue that onto a piece. I bought this, I didn't even turn this, I bought this at Lowe's. Screwed a faceplate onto it, and you've got this rubber mat here, and you can put your bowl on it like this and line your tail center up, and you've got it centered pretty well, mostly. Sometimes you have to play with it, but it should be dead center, and then you can do whatever you want, but this won't fit on here, so we'll do it with a friction drive, and it's a friction drive and not a jam chuck, because a jam chuck is when you create a shape in here that your piece is going to jam onto. You're going to tap it on with a little mallet or something. A friction drive is literally just the pressure between the headstock and the tailstock coming together. So let's see, where did I put my... Also, if you use one of these, you probably really like it. I find that the cone tail center, or tail, whatever you call them, tail centers, they'll just keep going into the wood as much as you tighten that tailstock, whereas these little cup centers will kind of only go in so far, and you don't really want to be going too deep with this. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is true this up, otherwise we'll just be wasting our time. Okay, so that's in there. Man, it takes forever to do this kind of stuff when we're talking, so I apologize if it's boring. This is spindle orientation here, this piece. I'm still going to just use a bowl gouge on it because it's still a gouge, it's just shaped differently, so it just depends on how you cut with it. Okay, and what we don't want is we don't want a bump in there, and we don't want, we don't want a bump. So if it's flat, that should do it. You don't want anything in between here except your kitchen drawer liner. That's pretty good. So you really just, every time if you save these, they're going to move around, or you're not going to mount it right the next time, so you just always true it up every time for this part. Okay. So we'll lay that in there, and make sure it's a nice small piece that's just enough to cover the block that you've got here, because you don't want any of this bunching up in there. So we'll put this on. We'll bring up the tailstock. Oh, and I'm so sorry it's taking so long. There's just all kinds of tidbits in here that I think are important. Does everybody see this hole? This is from before when we had it between centers. So now I don't have to guess where the center of this is. I've already got it marked in here. And if you do, I know I'm the green wood guy, but if you do dry bowls and you rough them out, which is probably what most of you do, is cut your own wood and let it dry out. When you're rough turning, it's a lifesaver to put that hole there with the tailstock. Because no matter how you're going to put it back on the lathe again, you're going to need that hole. That's pretty good. Start with it down. Yeah, you almost couldn't ask for a better fit there. So now we're literally just held in here with the pressure from the tailstock. But it's a pretty good hold because this thing's pinched in there pretty good. Okay. Could have just brought this one tool. That's why I like this tool so much, is because I pretty much just use it for everything except for making the tenon. You could do an entire bowl with just this one tool. Okay, so we're gonna peel like we were doing at the beginning with the tool more, a little bit more horizontal. Sometimes I get it down, but we're just gonna have that flute open to 10 o'clock or so. And we're just gonna peel away some of that wood to get it out of the way quickly. And then I'll turn the tool almost, I need a clock. I don't know I wasn't in the military, so I don't know by the times. We're gonna have the flute almost tipping down a little bit with the handle down low, and we're just going to be engaging this wing with the side of the bowl. I hope that makes sense. All right. And we've got all that meat in there still because we had that double tenon. Goes back and forth. We're just going to blend the side of the bowl in. This is where it's really, really nice to have that piece of black poster board behind the lathe, because I can barely see. You have to trust your fingers. We're going to get that nub pretty small down here. And if you didn't go...
Body too.
Sorry?
So most how you're using your body when you're making
Yes.
too, not
Yeah, I think when I did the skew chisel presentation, I was talking about, you move your body, not your arms. You want to use like a larger muscle area, your legs, and I'm not a physicist, so I can't explain it exactly that well, but the larger muscle groups that you use, the more controlled you are. If I'm standing here like this, doing this, these arms can do anything. So, you're anchored to the floor, like with your feet. So, I was saying let's take one more pass. So that can be risky to do sometimes. But what you can do is, when you take it off and you see that you still had a little bit more meat in there. You can take it off from the outside. How many times can I say meat today? Let's see. Okay, I think for demo that'll be good. It would be just fine to sand it like that, and you can fool around with that for forever. But if you'll notice, I never came back up to the rim again because it's not true anymore. So anytime I get halfway up the bowl, you start hearing that because it's only hitting on the end grain, because that side grain's already starting to sink in. So the idea is to ease out of the cut as you come up the bowl. Does that make sense? Yeah, you just kind of blend them together.
Talk just a minute about,
Yeah.
this question has come up several times over the last year. Talk about sanding wet wood.
Oh, okay. When it's this thin, I mean, this isn't even, it's wet, but it'll sand.
It was on the tree today, right?
It was on the tree this morning. That tree, I did a 14-inch salad bowl with that tree, and the water was, my shirt was soaked. It was slinging out. I've got a line. The lathe is, 8 feet away from the wall, and there's still a line going up to the ceiling over there. And then there's no line over here because that's where I'm standing. So I get all that. But yeah, you could totally sand this, and actually, I brought like some 220 that we can use. We don't need to go any coarser than that because, well, one, it's green, it cuts really beautifully. But green wood can also cut really nasty if you don't have that presentation right. So you guys know I love Alan Lacer to death. So, but he said the key to wood turning is a sharp tool at the correct angle. That's all there is to it. Because this is not a physically difficult activity to do. This should be, you're just standing here dancing with the lathe and letting the tool do its thing. If you're pushing and you've got white knuckles, I have white knuckles because I'm so pale, but if you're just wrenching down on your tools and using your arms, you're never going to get a smooth cut because you're not letting the tool do what it needs to do. Does this thing have reverse too? Yes. Okay. I'll just touch it because I don't want to blast you guys, but we'll sand the outside a little bit. I didn't bother on the inside. And you need to sand the inside before you flip it around because now you don't have a temp. So if you have a vacuum shop, that's good. And sanding, something this size, like 700-800 is good. You don't want to have your speed real high or you're going to make a lot of heat. And you also want to keep this sandpaper moving the whole time. You don't want to linger in one spot. You want to keep the same part of the sandpaper connected to it. You flip it around. I see tool marks in here. But,
Being green wood, is it not clogging up the sandpaper?
Turning it that thin, it's probably dry.
It's not that wet anymore. I mean, it's damp to the touch, but you could let this. This is what I do. In my shop, I would start with. It's a good idea to start lower with the sandpaper than what you think you need. If you think you need 120, you might want to drop down to something like 80 or 100, because especially working with green wood. Sometimes there's little things in there that show up later that you thought you got, but you really missed it. So if I was doing this bowl in my shop, I would probably have started at 120. Even though there's no tear out, I would still do 120 just for a few seconds on here to get rid of tool marks, because I can see tool marks on the inside and outside, but we're not going to worry about that much today. But if I was in my shop, I would do 120, 180, 220. If it's a utilitarian bowl, like if I was making this so I could eat something out of it, I would just do 220. There's not really a whole lot of reason to go much higher than that for something that's just going to get washed all the time and dinged up. If it was a showpiece, I would probably do 400 to 600. You got to remember too that when you're sanding up into the thousands, you're kind of you're burnishing it. You could do the same thing with these, just pick these up and run them on the bowl. So yeah, I'll just touch that again. But, yeah, there are tool marks and little bumps and things, but I'm already at 11 o'clock and I haven't done anything else yet. So okay. And nobody has a spindle gouge on them, do they? Can't remember what I brought. I have three. I have 3 gouges that have all the same grind on them. But I bring them just in case. I always have a sharp edge on one. This one's a little smaller. It's the same grind. It's just a smaller tool. I'll try to get this nub just a little smaller. Make sure we're in forward. That's always fun. I'll try to get.
You're not worried about it cracking because you've turned it so thin that
I don't worry about them cracking ever. That's something that is really dependent on your environment. I will turn a bowl. I'll turn a bowl green, and I'll put it in the oven, or I'll put it in the microwave, or I'll put it in the spare room with the ceiling fan on. If it's somewhat thin and your walls are fairly consistent, I've pretty much never had one crack on me unless it already had a crack in it that I didn't know about. So it is very specific. Now, if you lived in like Arizona or something, you would probably want to put it in a bag with the shavings, with these shavings that are still damp. This stuff makes really good packing material too. If you sell your work, it's a good way to package stuff. But yeah, I mean, if it's probably under a 1/4 inch, I don't know why it wouldn't. I don't think it would crack. And all I do is turn green bowls. I don't turn. I don't turn dry wood unless it's somebody specifically wants it that way. They want a dead perfect circle, or it's something that has to fit something else, like a box. You don't really make boxes with green wood. So let's see. We got till noon, right? Okay. Why don't we do a quick one with a foot on it, and then we'll do the design talk, and we can see if we can do that in like 15 minutes or something. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or anything before we do another one? Would anybody not like me to do another one? We can just jump right into the discussion. But I think I can do this. If I don't do a whole lot of explaining, I think we can do it pretty quick.
How long do you leave it in the microwave? About 30 seconds?
Sometimes I'll do like 2 or 3 minutes.
What power?
Normal power. I don't know. Let's see. What are the? Oh, is it based off of wattages? I don't know. Microwaves.
Most of them are like 1200 or something.
Yeah, I would just put it in a normal, full-size microwave for it. I mean, as my recommendation, I would probably do, 30 seconds to start with, and then let it cool down for, 15 or 20
You
minutes.
would probably actually see steam coming off of it.
Yeah, you want it to be where you reach in to grab it and you say ow. So you want it to have a little steam coming off of it because you're trying to wick that moisture out.
Do you wipe off the whole bowl in between times to get some of that moisture off?
It's not. I don't know that I've really found that it has much sitting on it, but that wouldn't be an issue. You could definitely do that if you had water puddling up on there. We're gonna take the chuck off the same way we put it on, by twisting the knob and not the chuck. I would be more fussy with it, I think, at home, but I think it'll do. Okay. My better judgment is telling me that we should just get into the design talk, but if I wasn't here, I would be at home turning right now. And I don't want to turn it to wood. Okay, so this one though, we'll do it quick. I'll throw in some info here and there as I think of it, but we won't. Okay, we're at like 800, and that's got just a teeny bit of vibration, but there's a line there where this thing does not need to be rattling and walking away from you. But if it's vibrating a little bit, that's all right. You'll true it up, and every cut that you make is getting it that much closer to true. And you can then slowly start bringing the speed back up. But just a tiny bit is okay, but the advice there is just that this thing shouldn't be at risk of falling or hurting you. So, okay. All right. I'm going to try to make the tenon just a little smaller on this one because I think, well, the chuck was still, the tenon was still just slightly too big, I think, wasn't it? And this makes such a humongous mess. I mean, I have one of those mini brute trash cans, you know, the big gray ones, and 12-inch bowl will fill that thing up like 2 or 3 times. So but it's a lot of fun now, and I personally get a lot of satisfaction from waking up the next morning and seeing how the bowl's doing, and see, oh, did it move a lot, or did it just move a little bit, or did it get really weird and now I don't like it, or is it better than it was? Don't ever touch the piece while it's spinning. Is anybody bored? Does anybody have questions or anything?
Just watching.
Just watching, okay. Oh, I guess you can see it pretty good on there, that's nice. This is a really helpful thing to make this dovetailed scraper, because I'm done with the tenon now. And I didn't have to mess with it or check it or try it out. It's just done already, and we can get back to what we were doing. I'm still going to do the double foot on this one because I would like to do a reverse curve at the bottom. I think that looks really nice, and it helps lift the piece up off the table visually. And you want to make sure that you don't blast off of that, and when you come around, slow down your feet rate a good bit, because you'll lose a teeny bit of the height sometimes if you end up getting any chip out on this top where the rim is going to be. So just slow down a minute. Oh, you know what? I did actually make my shoulder a little too small with that last cut, so. Still be enough. So vibrating on here. I don't know, it's just a good idea to check, and if you hear something funny, just stop and look, because it's better than being sorry. that curve was just a little bit too sharp right there. I'd like for it to be a little bit more gradual. And that Richard Raffin book that I brought with me, it's really, I really recommend it because it has some good pictures in it. So if you can't read, then it's great. But it's got good pictures in it, and one of the pictures in the book is some water hoses laying on the ground. And you can look at those curves and just be inspired by anything that you see. I think the thing that's so important about design, sorry, I'm doing two things at once. I think the important thing about design is that, you know, when you go to look for a new car at the dealership, there's a reason why, there's a reason why you're drawn to something, that, you know, you got a favorite car because you like something about it. It could just be the color, or it could be more to do with the shape. And there's a reason why it's attractive. And there are, you know, rules and guidelines to those things, and there's, you know, does that make sense? There's a reason why you like it. It's not just because it's a certain type of car. So you want to try to apply that to your wood turning too. Okay. Try to do this in just a few minutes here because we gotta start talking about other things. See, I'm leaning back and forward. My arms aren't really doing this. Maybe they're moving a little bit. My legs are moving my body back and forth, and my arms are more or less staying still. Get rid of that sharp corner because I got a bad habit of touching it. Just a little more, but you want to be reasonable. When you're doing the inside, your arms are moving a lot more because you got to think about different things at the same time, like starting with the flute closed and then opening it up and then dropping the handle. So, you know, you can't do that with your legs. So. switch to a sharper gouge. Taurus comes up a little bit because we switched to a smaller tool. Getting pretty thin, so we'll probably stop there. And that little nub at the bottom, I got 2 marks in this one too, I apologize. But that little nub in the bottom, you know, you always get that little bump in the bottom. You can self-create that by sanding. When you're sanding by hand, you can accidentally get that little bump in the middle. But what you do to get rid of it is, let's turn this over. Oh, you can't see it on there anyway. I'm so sorry. What you do is you come up from underneath that little nub in the bottom. Now, don't, you know, go cranking it, or else you're going to meet the end grain that's coming around and it's going to jerk this tool up out of your hands. But you just kind of go underneath the bump and slowly bring it up a little bit over the bump and then start working your way out to the left. That's what I do. And I feel like I'm low in the bottom and I'm real thin on the sides, but right in that little bottom section there, I'm still a little bit thick. So it's good to be, maybe not when you have 2 topics, but it's good to be picky with this stuff, you know. A lot of people won't notice it, but for you as a craft person, you know, you need to be picky about it and try to do the best job that you can. You know, it really pays off and makes you a better turner and makes you more sensitive to things. That's good enough. We got other things to do, so we'll just leave that. But yeah, I got some tool marks. I'm a little bit nervous. Got a little bit of a heavier hand than you should, and I'm in a hurry. But. Okay, so again, if we got rid of this 10 right now, we would probably have like a 1/16 of an inch in the bottom of our bowl, and you don't want that, do you? So we've got that double foot there, and we've got all this, I won't say it, we got all this extra wood down here that we can play with, and we've given ourselves a little bit of wiggle room. We've got the hole from the tail center in here, but it's not really that deep because we were using the cup center. So we'll end up with a bottom in here that's all right. This is not that great, but it'll do. Okay, so we'll go back to the friction drive. Does anybody in here really love having a nice clean shop? Anybody? I know you do. I've seen yours. Yours looks good.
Well, on a rare occasion.
When I'm coming over.
It doesn't look so good right now.
I am admittedly a little bit of a neat freak, and it just helps me sleep at night, knowing that all my babies and everything are taken care of, and waxed and whatnot. Anyway, what I was going to say is that if you don't have a leaf blower yet, it makes a great shop assistant because you can sweep up all this mess as best you can with the broom, and then you just open up those garage doors and go to town with the leaf blower. That makes it really nice.
That's spring cleaning.
Yeah.
When I used to wood turn in my garage, the wife was always fussing about the layer of dust on her car.
Yeah.
So the last thing I broke out before I went inside was the dust, the leaf blower.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. And what I did is very true, it's running very true. What I did is I organized a lot of my stuff into bins, or just tried to do different little things so that I could just stand in the back of the shop and just blast the whole thing with the leaf blower. Because, and I would just make a mental note of everything that fell off the shelves when I was doing it. And I thought, I need to reorganize this section, maybe get some magnets or something. And now I can just go crazy with it and nothing falls off, so that's really nice. Okay, so this one, I almost made this one no footing. We're gonna put a little foot on here, and we're gonna do a little reverse curve, and then we'll still have like 45 minutes for design talk. Okay, so we'll go a little fast. Went through all the trouble of bringing my little, what are those, conduit wraps or something, and I've got my tools all over the place with no covers on them. Okay, so I've gotten rid of the tin mostly, and now I've got my little cone shape, and I'm gonna have the flute pretty much closed here. That's open and that's closed, and I'm just gonna drop the handle nice and low, and just kind of work this back and forth. And that's the nice thing about we're doing like a shear scrape, but we're still scraping, so we can actually move the tool in both directions. With a gouge, what would happen if you went backwards? That'd be good. So, do what? Yeah, it does. Okay, so I'm happy with that bottom curve, but it's not really blending up with the walls very well. So, take a little bit of that. That's pretty nice. It's always more fun just to push it a little further, see if you can mess it up or something. I just don't want the section where they meet to have any kind of abrupt change to the curve. You want that curve to be like you took that water hose and just twisted it around. You don't want to have a kink in it. So, I still see a little something. Let's just try it. But it really pays to just, I mean, if you're doing this for a living and you got to make, a bowl in 10 minutes or whatever, you probably still be doing super good, but you don't have to be quite so fussy all the time. But if you're just doing it for fun, then why not be fussy with it? The nice thing about doing the shear scraping is that you're hardly taking off anything. So, I mean, look at this. That's hardly any wood at all. So you can really fine tune those curves. And honestly, I think nice curves are what woodturning is all about. Okay, so again, we're gonna have a little hole from the tail center here because I like to carve. I started getting into spoon carving recently, and I use a little hook knife to carve out the bowls of the spoons. And a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll undercut this rim so that I'll undercut the rim of the foot so it just contacts there, and you got that little recess in the bottom. And I'll kind of scoop that gently with a spoon knife, and that'll get rid of that little hole. And this is another spot again where I would be using a spindle gouge to do this, but I forgot. But we start with the flute closed. Start with the flute closed and touch the bevel and rub, and then when we can start engaging the tip, and as soon as we engage the tip, we can open the flute up a little bit. And that's going to let it cut to the left of the nose. Okay. And I've got absolutely zero idea, besides just doing it a lot. I've got no idea what we've got there in the bottom as far as depth, but we should be good because we got rid of the tenon, and then we still had a little bit of that secondary tenon in there. Yeah, that's perfect. So all we'd have to do is just cut off that little nub, or you could, make a jam chuck for it or something, or a vacuum chuck is great too. But I don't have one, and I know a lot of people who do it for a hobby don't have one because it's a complicated and expensive thing.
If you're going to use a vacuum chuck, you have to do it right now because once it warps, you're
Yeah.
not going to get a vacuum anyway.
Right, it's over at that point. Man, I wish I had brought my saw with me, my hand saw with me, because I cut those. They got passed around, didn't they? I cut all these in half so you could see the cross section, and I can tell. I'd like you to, when we pass this one around, I'd like you to just feel this. This right here is really good. That's exactly how I want it. It's maybe not twice as thick as this, but just a little bit right there. But then when you get about halfway up the walls, I can feel a little deviation in the curve there. It's not quite a flowing curve on the inside. It doesn't match the outside perfectly. But it's pretty even all the way around, with that exception of it not being dead even all the way to the bottom, because otherwise it would just not be very stable. We got this teeny tiny foot on here. Okay. All right.
Quite a pile of shavings for two small pieces.
Two little 5-inch bowls. Yeah. Okay, well, we can do the design talk now. And I took this off because you don't want to wear your scarf while you're turning or whatever, your tie or whatever. Okay. Let's see. I did almost zero planning for this, so I must admit. Okay, so we're going to pass these back around again, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker and I'm going to color in the areas where I think I should have removed a little bit more, or if it's fine the way it is, I'll leave it. That sound good? I could do it kind of quickly.
You were talking about these on the table too.
Yeah. I'll just do one half. I won't sit here and try to color both sides.
When you're passing those around, could you also indicate the one that you think would be best as a starting bowl?
Yeah. Best as a starting bowl?
You know, if you were going to just start out turning real thin, which would be...
Okay, sure. Okay, so here's this one. This isn't perfect, but you can see what I'm going for, and you can see that this one, the inside, this is a funny shape because we actually have a point here on purpose for the design of the bowl, but the inside doesn't really quite follow that well. But I don't really like to have, a corner on the inside. I think if you have a corner on the outside of your bowl, you should just try to follow that corner, but leave that little bit that's in those corners. Don't try to make a corner on the inside. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I just don't think that it feels very good. I think when you put your hands inside of one of these, you don't really want there to be any interruptions in there. You kind of want it to be a little smoother. And these were all turned green. Sorry, what was that about the microwave? Oh, I don't know.
Excuse me again.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A bowl like this is beautiful right now, but will it crack? Or do you need to put it in the microwave or any more preparations?
Something like that. Well, these are just practice. I mean, like I said, if I was in my shop, I would spend more time on them probably.
Yeah, but I mean, from this point,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Oh, what do I do afterwards? Yeah, no, it won't crack. I would just leave it I wouldn't put it out in the driveway in the sun, but I would just leave it on the counter, put it in your kitchen counter and just wait till, I'd probably wait till that one's good. I'll just leave that how it is. And same with this one. These two here this is ideal to me. You've got that teeny little bit more here in the bottom. It's even, but it's a little thinner here on the sides, and then there's it gets just barely slightly thicker around the rim. And when you pick this up, it feels nice because it fits the shape of your fingers in there. And this one is pretty much ideal too. But Richard Raffin, who wrote this book and many other books, he describes what I'm talking about as a related curve. It's not the same curve, but it's a related curve. So when I say that there's deviations in the curve, I'm not talking about it's an inch on the sides and a 1/4 inch on the bottom and 3/8 on the rim. I'm talking about like a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch difference in variation altogether. And if you, here's the garden habits thing. If you want to read it on that page and pass it around. But you have that related curve in there, so it's a shade thicker and thinner where you want it to be. I kind of think I just brought this book because he was on my mind because he passed away. I think was it Wednesday that he passed away? And I'll just pass it around because I have it, but there's a design section that I think I've dog-eared in your design. There's a design section in that book, but it's really just got a ton of wisdom in it altogether, and then a little bit more on design.
This is a good book. It's very practical advice. Very practical.
Okay, so we're doing kind of all right on time, actually. This little plate thing I don't particularly like it. It's nice and thin, but it's a little too thin for something that you're going to use. I mean, it's dry as a bone, and I can still move it with my hands. So that's something to consider. Turning thin it's cool and it's impressive, but it's not always practical. Your piece needs to be a reflection of what it's going to be used for. So like this, I mean, you could put some feathers on it or something, but you don't. I probably wouldn't like eat a meal off of that, and it's small anyway. But that one's verging on too thin, and it's not really, the walls really aren't very consistent in it. This is a oak hollow form that I did, and if you put your hands in it, you can feel where the inside curve and the outside curve aren't really that well related to each other. It's not awful or anything, but it's just something that could be improved upon. And I think that even if you, well, I will say,
A normal person is not gonna notice that.
no. I think that's for you. I think that's for the turner.
It wants to impress another turner, I can care less. Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's your self-satisfaction.
I get I get pride and satisfaction from not just making something, but making something that I know is spot on and as good as I could do it.
Can you sometimes, for example, go like that? Will it be possible for you to come and make a demonstration how you make?
Oh, to do a demo on that?
Yeah.
I couldn't do that on this lathe. I could do a little one, but I have a long hollowing bar that I use for that, and a stabilizer arm for that. So it would be difficult, but I could do a miniature one. I could do a smaller one.
Yeah.
And that I use traditional tools pretty much exclusively, but I will use carbide for hollowing.
You do carbon for hollowing?
For hollowing, yeah. You can use high-speed steel tips on hollowing tools, but you're kind of being rough in there for a while. I would use carbide first, and then switch to the high-speed steel for the last.
Yeah, I started with carbon, I'm still working with carbon.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's literally what I do with those.
But you get the smoother surface with
Yeah, with hollowing, I don't know that there's quite as much of a difference. I mean, I still think you do get a little bit better with high-speed steel tips, but you have to take really light passes still. And it's on the inside, so
Sure.
it's, not as big a deal. Okay, so these ones, there's a couple things about them. See how I've got, this is the opening here, and then I've got this little small foot on here. And it looks really nice when it's sitting down like that, because it's elevated up off the table. It doesn't look like it's just slumped down onto it. The issue, so sorry.
Just spray it all around.
Yeah, it's bad. The issue with this one is that the curves in here are like exactly related, and so there's not really any more weight on the bottom of this than there is anywhere else. And so I've got this really lightweight hollow form that it just tips over if you accidentally bump the nightstand or whatever it's on, it tips over and it's not very fun. So that one could have benefited from that related curve that I'm talking about, where it's just a little bit more at the bottom, not a half-inch difference, just a little bit. And then this one is an exaggerated version of that related curve. This one, I think it feels pretty good, and it has that small foot on it again, with that gentle reverse in the curve down here. And, but I think that it would have been better to just leave the whole thing a little on the thicker side, or take it all the way thin. I think that the inside and the outside they vary a little bit too much.
Did you say what you did to get the color?
That one, and that one, and that one are all oak from the same tree. And the black ones, I did steel wool and vinegar mixture, which is like a dead easy way to add black dye to something. And then I find that sometimes I get like just pure black when I do that, and sometimes I get more of a grayish blue. So I also burned those with a torch, and that's actually really helpful too, because sometimes when you want to get it black with a torch, you can have to spend too much time in one spot, and then you end up getting cracks and things. So if you start with the steel wool and vinegar and then burn it, you don't have to spend as much time on it. That's just something that I picked up that
Have you found that some designs lend themselves to warping, changing shape? Because,
Yeah.
I mean, these have changed shape, but it almost looks like they were meant to be that way.
right. And this one's a good example of that. This one is, it's not sanded. I just wanted to, I have this kind of thing with, I really like, I like